People have left the Trump White House in the past 2 years, but two of the people closest to the president have managed to hang on. The new book, Kushner, Inc., The Extraordinary Story of Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump, explores the president's daughter and son-in-law's rise to power and the potential problems their personal dealings may bring to the West Wing. The administration has already denounced the book as, quote, fiction. Press Secretary Sarah Sanders said in a statement, quote, "It's sad, but not surprising the media would spend time promoting a book based on shady, anonymous sources and false information instead of all the incredible work Jared and Ivanka are doing for the country." Investigative reporter Vicky Ward wrote Kushner, Inc. and joins me now. Vicky, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Before we get into the details of the book, I'd like you to talk a little bit about the process. How many people did you talk to, and how did you navigate perhaps what might have been some competing agendas as you sought out the facts of what happened?
So 2 years of reporting, both in New York, because a lot of the story is in New York and some in New Jersey, and in Washington. 220 different people, 118 of them many, many times. You know, when you deal with anonymous sources, and every book about this White House, in fact, most White Houses, if they're written contemporaneously, have to, do have anonymous sources, and this White House is particularly punitive. So people are reluctant to go on the record. I think the only way you can really deal with it is to make sure that every scene is double-sourced, double or triple, but as long as it's multi-sourced, then I think you're good to go. What you can't do is just take one person's version of events.
So you lay out in the book how both Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump were raised to look at rules differently than other people.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you can explain what was that view and how did that mindset help them with their business dealings before 2016?
Right. So, they were, both of them, raised to believe that rules exist for other people. I think that Jared's entire life has been shaped by what happened to his father, okay? And his father went to jail in 2000, he actually went in 2005. And Jared never believed that what happened to him was justified. I mean, he's been very clear, and that, I think, it's very important to understand that what happened, and I lay out the animosity between Chris Christie, who sent Charles Kushner to jail, and Charles Kushner. Chris Christie had enormous leverage. He had a lot of personal information about Charles Kushner that he threatened to air in public, which is why Charles Kushner pled guilty. Jared was exposed to a lot of that, and I think that it's important for readers to understand that is why he has a real animosity towards rules, towards the rule of law, and towards Chris Christie. It's why, within the first 24 hours of the transition, he fires Chris Christie, but he rips up the transition books, throwing the whole thing into chaos. And we know that this administration is one of chaos, but Jared is sort of at the heart of that, at the beginning of it. I think Ivanka, her whole mojo is, or MO rather, is about perception. She writes in one of her books, perception is more important than reality. And I think you see that for both of them, image is much more important than substance. And I think that when Ivanka then gets to the White House, you see that playing out. She thought that as long as she could message her way, she could continue to own her fashion brand, and go into all these meetings with all these foreign leaders and get on phone calls with foreign dignitaries. And the countries that these people were attached to would give her brand trademarks. I mean, there is an obvious appearance of something very, very wrong with that. But I think Ivanka thought, well, I'll just go on television and explain myself away. But I think we're beginning to see times, they're being caught out.
So why is understanding how these two figures operated before going to Washington so critical? I mean, you touched on it a moment ago, but so critical to understanding how it is that they operate now that they are within the White House at this point.
So, I paint a picture of Jared as being, in his real estate business, a very sort of imperious delegator who's not really in the weeds, not familiar with the details. And that doesn't matter when you're basically running your family real estate business in New York. Not knowing the details really matters when you go into government, as Jared found very quickly when he couldn't fill out a security clearance form. And as I say in the book, that led to the Trump administration's worst mistake. It was Jared who, once the press learnt he hadn't disclosed meetings with, the Russian ambassador, a Russian banker connected to the Kremlin, hadn't put any of those, or any of his other foreign meetings during the transition, on his security clearance form. Meanwhile, the FBI had started an investigation into whether or not there was collusion between Russia and the Trump campaign. It was at that moment that Jared very publicly went gung-ho, I quote someone in the book, and in a room full of people, Steve Bannon was there, said to Trump, "You've got to fire James Comey. And here's why. The FBI don't like him, the Democrats don't like him, and the base will love it." And a lot of people disagreed with Jared. They thought it was clearly self-serving. Trump listened to him, and it's been a disaster.
So is it clear who actually wields more power, Jared Kushner or Ivanka Trump? Because from the stories that you relate in the book, I mean, both at times faced sort of the withering, at times sort of rejection of their ideas by Donald Trump.
Right.
And at other times seemed to have the president's ear in a way that, of course, no one else could in the West Wing.
Right. So I think I say in the book, it comes in waves, right? There are moments when the president really wants them to just go home, and ask John Kelly, his chief of staff, please just make life so unpleasant for them that they just want to resign. And the interesting thing is that Trump can't say no to his daughter. At the end of the day, I think he finds it. He knows that a real drag on his presidency. He knows, particularly now with the issue of their security clearances coming under scrutiny, he knows they shouldn't have security clearances. He knows Jared's financial vulnerabilities and his naivete make him a target. He sees them struggling. He hates the negative press that they get over the security clearance, over the misuse of emails. But at the end of the day, this is his great Achilles heel. Can he actually find the courage to do what I think Republicans think, his supporters think, is the right thing?
Do we know what kind of role they plan to play in the upcoming 2020 election?
Well, look, so far, the body count, that they've caused, they're the people left standing in the White House, and everyone else has been pushed aside by them. So I think, what I say in the book, we're at a crossroads. We can now go in two ways. Either Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump are going to be held accountable, both by Congress, with its new powers of subpoena, and by multiple investigations, Robert Mueller and others, or this relentless march to billions and power just continues.
All right, Vicky Ward, thank you so much for stopping by, Vicky. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.